Okay, what we have here is we have our Sunburst layout work table station. It comes with 2 sets of mutton and spacer clamps on each side, along with a tape rule to give you your radius. On this table, we have 4 machines that are mounted to help you make your half-round hubs designs. Moving over to the first machine here, we have what they call the mutton spacer bender. On this bender, we can tool these wheels to up to 2 sizes of mutton and 1 size of spacer for you, so you don't have to interchange your rolls. On the top of the machine, they have what they call a digital indicator. This counts the travel of the rolls as they move up and down, and it helps you when you need to repeat sizes that you're making. Continuing around the table, you have the 4-inch chop saw. We can put an optional gauge bar for runouts on here, but with this table, it's mainly for your half rounds and your specialty cuts. This is operated by a foot pedal that's mounted underneath the table. Moving on, we have what they call the radius notcher. To put your notches in your half round material, it will also notch straight material as well. This unit is set up as a combo, so you can open up your thumb screw here, slide your spacer in, and it will also put your keeper holes in your spacer. Another option with this machine is the digital readout here. Normally these notchers come equipped with a tape measure bar, but on this particular model we've added a digital readout to give you accuracy. And lastly on our table is our curved pinner or our curved keeper punch. You have a guide here to allow for your mutton to slide through after it's already been bent or if it's straight, as well as a spot for your spacer, bent or straight as well. Pins move forward and back. You actuate the pins, look for your location, and lock them in. And that's a brief overview, and in a minute we'll start making a grid for you. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll start to bend our outer frame using our spacer bar. We have this tooled for 1/2-inch spacer. So what we'll do is we'll insert our spacer, checking our pressure gauge to make sure we're somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds. Anything more than that will fold the spacer. Using our limit switches on the bottom, we will bring it up so the rolls won't travel very far. Using our toggle switch, we'll put a pinch on the spacer. Now using the foot pedal, we push forward to move to the right, or push down back on it and it'll go to the left. So we will run our spacer all the way to one direction before changing and coming back. So we start to bend. Stopping before we reach the end of the material and reversing direction. Like so. Now to do the mutton bar, we will simply slide it in the slot provided, bring our air pressure up to approximately 40, lower our limit switch a little bit so we can get some more pressure, and start our bend in the same way. By increasing the air pressure, we can bend a little faster. Just like so. Now to bend a real tight, fast piece, we will insert it the same way, turn the air pressure up to almost 50, and we can bend it a lot faster into a smaller, tighter radius. When bending any material, one thing key to keep in mind is when you change directions, you always want your leading edge on the outside. If it goes inside, it will get bound up and your material will be stuck. So as I start the other way, I pull the leading edge out towards me, keeping it on the outside. Just like so. Now, we want to make a half round shape out of this piece here. So we would go over to our chop saw there and cut off some ends to give us a half round shape. So we will take our half rounds in and we'll make our cut. And we'll slide that over there for a minute. And do the same thing to our spacer. Now that we have our circles made, we're ready to move over to the clamping station and clamp them in. Okay, now that we've bent our spacer and our muttons for our outlines of our grid, what we'll do is we'll move our mutton clamps in to about 24 inches, which is about the height here of the spacer itself. Once we have our clamps locked in on 24, and we have the spacer on the top at 24, we can set our clamps in place to hold the spacer so it won't move. Okay, now as far as our mutton goes, it's the same procedure. We even it up with the number on the table as well as the numbers on the side. So in this case, we're going to go to about 15 inches. We'll lock that clamp in place, lock that one in place, and slide your mutton down. You can do the same here. It would be an optional set of clamps, but we can do the same thing there, so we have our 3 patterns. Now that you have where you want everything, the first step will be is to making your cutoff cuts so everything is at a half round. So take a pencil, go to the edge of the table, and take a little scribe mark across each piece, right where you'd like to cut. Now, since we already have the pieces in the clamps and ready to go, as you can see on the table, you have scribe marks to give you your spoke design. Whether you want your spokes to come all the way through, halfway to the bottom of the spacer grid, that's all up to you. But we have the scribe marks available, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make a scribe mark here, and we will pin on each side there. So we can have a piece coming through here and a piece going through there. On this one, we will mark it, but we will do a notch showing you the notch capabilities that'll bring the piece to here. So we will need a scribe there as well for the pin. Same on this side. And on this one, we won't do up here. What we'll do is we'll just do a smaller piece here. So we'll need a scribe there and there. Now lastly, before you move your material back off of its clamps, you want to make sure that everywhere you're going to connect to spacer, you have marked as well. And in this case, we have 2 of them. One will be here, and one will be here. Once you've made all your corresponding scribe marks, we can remove all the pieces and take them to the saws, then to the pinner or notcher, whichever the case may be. Okay, now we've made all of our marks. We're going to go ahead to our cutoff saw and make a few cuts here. Lining up our scribe marks. We're going to cut off the ends first. And we will do that to all 3 of our pieces here. Now that we've cut all 3 of our ends off, we're ready to move on to the notching step. So, as we had said, we were going to notch the middle piece. So we will take our pre-marked scribe there, and we will line it up in the center of the die. We will line it up here using our scribe and the middle mark. We will insert it, double check we've got it lined up, and make our notch. Like so. We will go ahead and set that piece back, and we will move to our pinner. To set our pinner, what you'll do is you'll press down on the actuator so your pins come down, moving it back and forth until you find the center of the slot you're working with, and tightening it down. Now that we're ready, we will take our piece of material, and we wanted 3 pin marks on this one with our 3 pencil marks. And from the pencil looks of it, we wanted them all on the outside. So we will insert our material into the slot, slide it around so that our pencil mark lines up there in the middle, and press the button. Continuing on with our material. And repeating until all 3 pinholes on your material have been done. Like so. Pull our material out, and we can grab the next piece. Looking at our scribe marks, we know that one was a notch. This one pin on the bottom only, and this one here is on the top and bottom. So we can insert it upside down at first, till our first scribe mark is again lined up, and make our punch. Skipping the middle notch. And get that lined up there, and make the pins go through. Now, we had to do one. We did the 2 on the bottom on the inside, and going by our scribes, we had the 1 on the outside, so we'll repeat this the same way. And make our marks. And now lastly, our spacer, our outside of our frame. Looking for our scribe marks, we'll see we have just 2 on the outside. So, using the same principle as adjusting as before, we loosen our set screw, slide our pins back, pressing the actuator so we can line up the pins exactly where we want them, and tightening down again. Now we can insert our spacer through here. Always remember to keep it along the back edge back there. Same principle, line up this in the middle and hit your pins. One more. Like so. Now we can set our grid back down, and all of our pins and notches are in place. Okay, now that we've punched all of our holes and made our notch, we've got our grid set back down on the table. What we now need to know is how long these pieces in between need to be. This one's approximately 6.5 inches. That one's approximately 8.25. That's approximately, actually with this one we're notching, so we're going to come all the way to the bottom. So that's approximately 16 inches. And this again is approximately 6.5. Now, knowing all those dimensions, we will take a flat piece of mutton bar and we will go ahead and we will cut all of our corresponding pieces. Action. Okay, so now we've got our flat piece of bar here. We'll go ahead and measure off our first piece, which was about 16.5, we said. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut that piece. We had a couple 6.5-inch pieces we needed. So we'll mark those with a pencil. And we'll go ahead and cut those. And we had one 8.5. Okay, now that we have all those pieces cut, what we need to know next is where the notch goes in our longer middle piece to correspond with the notch in our half round. So we will take this piece back over to our half round laid out on the table. Lay it over top and mark here and here, showing where we want our notch. Once we've marked it, we can move over to our notcher, line up the 2 pencil marks inside, and hit the button, like so. Now that we have all of our pieces ready to go, the next step is the final assembly. So in order to do the final assembly, you will use your plastic keepers, like so. Insert them inside the end of the material and then into the spacer bar as well. And continue on until you complete your whole grid. The last final step will be making your straight spacer to connect everything on the bottom, and it will be the same procedure as before. Lay your flat spacer out, mark with a pencil where you'd like your keeper holes. You'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 sets on this one, and using the corner keys, you will connect your spacer with the flat piece with the half round on the ends. Okay, now that we've connected everything, our bottom piece of spacer here, we've made our pinholes, we've connected it with the corner keys to the outside, and we've taken our keepers, inserted them in all the locations, as well as laid the 2 notches together. So now we have our completed window grid. Okay, to add on to the video of how to make the radius grid here, we want to let you know that each one of the machines that are mounted at the table here today can be purchased individually. They do not need to be purchased as a whole kit here. And what we're going to do is the notcher here that's mounted on the end of the table, it can be adapted to several different sizes or types of mutton by changing over a blade and a die. So I'm going to go through it real quickly here and show you how to change over the die. Now, as with any machine, the first step you do before working on it is disconnect your air. That way there's no chance of injury. So, to change the die and blade, the first thing you'll need to do is remove the 2 Allen head screws off the valve actuator on the bottom. Some of you may have a foot pedal valve or a palm button valve like this one. It doesn't matter either way, the valve must come off. We've disconnected our air so we can disconnect the air lines from the cylinder by pushing up on the air line, holding the fitting, and pulling the air line back towards you. And we'll get rid of this one so we don't have it bouncing all over the place. Okay, now we have 4 Allen head bolts that hold the cylinder on. Those must be removed as well to change the blade. Okay. And one more screw and we'll have the cylinder off for you. Once you have all 4 bolts out, carefully lift up on the cylinder and pull it out. And there is your notcher blade. Rotate that so you can see it there. Now, to change the notcher blade over, you will notice a set screw here. Loosen the set screw that holds the dowel pin in place. The dowel pin will fall out. Pull your blade out, insert a new blade, repeat, reverse I should say, put the dowel pin back in and tighten back down. You'll have successfully changed over your blade. The last thing left to be will be the die itself. So coming to the front of the machine here, you have 2 bolts that hold the die on. So by removing both of those, carefully pull your die off and you can replace it with whatever die, whether it be contour or a different size of the flat bar or a straightened die versus a radius die. So once we take our new die, we slide it right back in place and we take the bolts and we put them back in. Okay, once we've gotten that far, we take our cylinder again, rotating the blade so that the face of the blade, so to speak, is facing backwards. If you have a combination unit like this one is, your 2 punch pins will be facing forward towards the outside of the machine. Taking your cylinder, carefully slide your blade back down into the slot that the die created when you mounted it. Holding your cylinder in place, you can start to screw your bolts in from behind. Once you get the first one in, you can let go on the front sides. And then continue on so you get all 4 bolts back in the cylinder. Okay, once we have our cylinder mounted back in place, lastly we'll want to put our valve back on. Okay, now that we've got our valve ready, just take the screws and put them back in, as so. And we'll want to reconnect our air lines. This one going to the bottom here. The top one going to the top fitting on the cylinder. The bottom one going to the bottom. And we can continue to tighten our valve back down. Once our valve is snugly in place, give a last check to make sure our air lines are secure, and we're ready to put air back on the machine and run it again. Now that we've returned air to the machine, a couple tests to make sure it works right. Now, being this was a radius die to accept your half rounds when you're doing your half round grid patterns there, we wanted to show you that it will also accept flat straight pieces of the mutton as well. We have a gauge block feature on here that you can use for multiple notches, and I'll kind of show you how that works here. First, slide your material through the die until it butts up to the step on the gauge block. Then you'll go ahead and you'll make your notch. Now, if you have multiple notches, slide your material down so that the notch you just created fits over the step neatly on the gauge block, as so, and make another. And you can continue on until you've made all the notches in your piece. Now, if you are using flat bar and you did purchase the notcher from us, we also give you a chart that tells you, you tell it how long your material is, it tells you where to put the notches for equal spacing. We call it a mutton notch chart. And that's about it.